guys, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I paint my pretty floral. For this example, this is in my do-it-yourself watercolor kit. If you do not have that and you still would like to learn how to paint that, don't worry, you can still do it. You just won't have the pre-sketched out that I've provided in the box, but you can definitely just pause the video and do a rough sketch of your own, use your own supplies, and follow along. Alright, so to start off, I have my mixing palette. I'm bringing over some blues, some reds, and some greens. I always make sure that I have a scratch piece of paper next to me so that I can test the colors that I have to make sure it's the right shade that I'm looking for the piece of artwork that I'm about to start. So after I was finished making the adjustments needed to find that perfect shade of green that I was looking for, I went in with a lighter shade of the green. So basically I just didn't have that much color on it. Just putting it in water, kind of dabbing it with a paper towel, and then I went in right now with more pigment around the base of the leaf, and then kind of just bringing it all over the sides, a little bit at the top to kind of just create some dimension and shading with the leaf. So for this twisted leaf, I used a darker color around the edges, and then I dried off my brush, got rid of all of the color, and in the middle I just kind of dabbed it that way that there was some dimension with the leaf. And then I went in again after that had dried just to kind of detail it, make it more outlined. So in this mixing palette, you just saw that I added a little bit more green to it, and I used a lot of water here versus pigment just to kind of give that lighter green. And I went through this, I think it's hydrangeas, with a lighter shade of green. And I just went all over with both hydrangeas with this color. So here's a tip for you guys. You don't necessarily need to be mixing a bunch of different colors of green. You can also play around with the different values of green, meaning if you have a green color on your palette, you could add a little bit more water to make it lighter. You could add more paint to it to make it darker. That way you're not constantly mixing different colors. But here I'm going to be using a different type of leaf, and I'm swatching to make sure it's the perfect tone. I added some brown to the green that I already had. I'm using different parts of my mixing tray and just kind of mixing those green colors that I have. I'm using different values, meaning I'm adding more water and then I'm adding more paint to it to just make it look different and not going crazy with all the different colors. And I'm also pulling my water. So you'll see here, I'm dragging it out and then I drag it back. See how right here, I'm dragging it back towards the base, the darker colors, because I want the darker colors towards the flowers, the base of it, to be darker always. It's just kind of like what I like to do. And then I kind of outline the outer parts of the leaf just to give it some shade, some dimension. So my favorite color to use, especially you'll see the color that's about to happen right here, my favorite colors to mix is green and red. It creates this really beautiful kind of like army gray, and I love it. And then I add a little bit of brown to that color. Like I'll take a little swatch of that color to another part of the mixing tray, get some brown in it, and it just creates a beautiful dimensional leaf. So for this bigger leaf, I switched over to the size 12 round tip, and then I'm doing the wet on wet technique, and I'm using a lighter value of green that I've used on the other leaves, and then I'm kind of just blotching it towards the bases of the flowers to make that part darker, just kind of shaded. And then I'm going to use the color that I used for the top, like the army green that I just talked about, and I'm going to pull that towards the base of it too. Again, I like having my darker shades towards different flowers and stuff. It just really makes it pop. And then I decided to go with a bluish kind of green mix of color, and then I put that towards the center. And then I used that army green again once that layer had dried to kind of outline the vein of the leaf, and then I'm just kind of shadowing, making different parts darker and lighter. So this is what I love about watercolor. There's so many layers, there's lots of things happening. It's not just simply just slapping on paper and then just hoping it turns out. And that's something that I had to learn over time. Like, I was just so impatient. I'd want everything to look perfect. And it took me a long time to realize I needed to have layers with my pieces. So that little pink thing you see up here, it's a dryer. I got it from Amazon specifically for watercolor. You can use a hair dryer or just let it dry, have patience. I just used my dryer just to kind of speed up the process. So now it's the fun part. Now it is painting the flower itself. So again, like I just said, it's all about layers, and it took me a really long time to figure out that I wasn't layering my pieces, so it looked flat, non-dimensional, and very amateur. So to take your paintings to the next level, you're gonna wanna wait until your paintings dry before you add on, but you also don't want to overwork. So sometimes it's good to kind of walk away from your piece, sleep on it, come back with fresh eyes, and make sure you're not overworking your piece as well. So here you'll see I'm doing wet on wet technique. I'm kind of moving that peachy color around the leaf, and then I started with a dark sender, pulling it out. I'm shading the crease of the petal. Okay, so now I'm going in with the dark pink in the center, and I'm kind of going along the petal creases. It just kind of makes it stand out more, makes it more realistic. So in my mixing palette, I also mixed, it was an orange, brown, and yellow, and I created the center. I don't know why, but I didn't manage to record that step, but that's what I used. And then I go around again, just shading the petals. It's all about layers. And then once I'm happy with the wet on wet technique, I let it dry. I also decided in here to use a little bit of that orange, very light value of it, which means I'm putting more water on my brush with just a hint of that brownish, yellowish center, and kind of going around the leaf. And then again, right here, you'll see that I'm using darker shades of the pink to outline and kind of give creases to the petals. And here's another layer. Here we go. I'm adding in again another darker shade of pink, but this time my painting is dry, so you're going to see that it stands out a little bit more and doesn't bleed as much, which is what you want. So I'm going around the outlines that I have again, the creases for the petals. I'm going in, making like different parts of it darker. So one thing that I didn't do that I wish that I did was I wish I would have let the center completely dry before I went in with my darker color. Some of it kind of bled and I just wasn't happy with the end result. But anyway, in this video, you're going to see that I went in and did little C, just little C shapes around to give it some shading and then give that middle the look that this particular flower needs. So you're just going to repeat everything that you just did with the other flower on this flower. The only difference is I did a lot more shading on this flower because I felt like there was, it was curved, so it needed a little bit more shading. So I got that black color. I used a different value of it, which means I put a lot more water in it. I dabbed it to make sure that it was not too dark, and I really shaded these two. With the one that's not fully blossomed, I used that orange color, the same one that was on my palette, a lighter value, and that's what I did for the shading on this particular non-blossomed flower as well. And then I use that same shading colors to go through the hydrangeas, and then the same orange color to go through the centers of the hydrangea again to give it more shading and more dimension. So I'm really just using the same colors, just using different values of it with more water or more paint to create, so that way just it flows a lot more, right? You want the painting to flow, you want the colors to flow, and that's why I just kind of rinse and repeat a lot of the colors I already have in the palette. So now I'm almost done with the piece. So now I'm going in with different shades of green, and I'm just kind of highlighting and putting more depth into this. I'm grabbing darker shades of green, I'm layering, and it just kind of makes these flowers pop and just makes it more realistic. I wanted to bring up the stem a little bit more and make the flower blend in more here. So you'll see that I got some green and I just kind of blended the stem with the flower here. And there you have it. That is how you paint a really pretty pink floral. I would love to see what you've done, so please tag me. I'll have my link to my Instagram below. Follow me, tag me. I want to see all of the creations that you have, and I will see you next time. If you like this video, please like and subscribe so you can follow along to my next video.